answering the phone is far more than a routine task. It is the very first step in building trust with families during their most vulnerable moments. By taking time to evaluate, train, and set a standard for excellence, you ensure that every call reflects the compassion and professionalism your funeral home stands for.
I'm Alan Creedy.
I'm Danny Jefferson.
And we're two guys in a question. And Danny, we got in a topic this morning that I thought was kind of interesting we should share with our listeners. You saw something on LinkedIn let's start off with that.
Well, a lady named Jamie Trebecki, she's a senior account executive for homesteaders and a founding member of the Death Care Collective.
Okay.
She was just referring that she had made some phone calls to a few funeral homes. And she said, honestly, of the first 15, she spoke to only 5.
Really?
And
what do you mean by that? They were an answering service? Or
she
what?
was calling for information about Illinois law and rules.
But when she says she only talked to 5, does that mean that she was getting an answering service or what?
Well, 10 never called her back.
Oh, my gosh.
Of those 5, 3 threw prices at her without really asking any questions.
Oh, my gosh.
Now, if you remember, this is what we experienced when we were working with our clients.
Yeah.
She said one flat out refused to order a specific box set from Messenger or told me to order it and send it to him regardless. She said, I took about 30 minutes with one on the phone and told him step by step their practices. So they told him it would be no problem to order the stationary kit and followed up with a recap email. That's how you do it.
Yeah.
So the wonderful thing about listening to this is, and even she mentioned this, that you're probably thinking this is a one-off and not something that happens often.
Oh, no, it's not a one-off.
Right. So then she goes now to the point. Have you shopped your own funeral home?
Exactly. That's why I thought it would be judicious of us to bring that up. I think she makes an excellent point. I'm going to add to this, and this is not a criticism. If I were a funeral home owner, I would periodically call in when the answering service is on duty. Just have the experience. And I'd act like I was a death call. I wouldn't call in just to say, well, I'm checking on you.
Or better yet, have a friend call.
Well, I'd do it myself because I'd want to hear it. I had an experience the other day. It was not a bad experience, but the answering service answered. They didn't try to hide the fact that they were an answering service, but it was, I just want to call it an awkward. It wasn't bad, but it was awkward. The way that the interaction was. And I don't think they did a bad job. And quite frankly, there's some funeral answering services that do an excellent job. I don't know which one I was talking to. I'm not trying to blame anybody. But the reason I think the owner should call in, if I had been the owner, I would have gotten whomever the manager was on the phone. I wouldn't be critical. I would just say, I would prefer you answer my phone this way.
When any answering service, any good answering service that you use should have what you want them to say. They should have, when you answer the phone, this is what I want them to say. This is how I want you to handle these particular tasks.
Oh, let me point that out. I think that is absolutely excellent advice. And if they're good, they will ask questions to get that information from you. But here I'm talking about tone, all right? So if you worked for me and your job was answering the phone for me, and I came to me and asked Mr. Creedy, I'm answering the phone, what one thing can you tell me is the most important thing I need to accomplish? Here's what I would say. You need to make everyone who calls for any reason feel like we're glad they called.
And how may I help you?
How may I help you? But I can name still to this day 2, 3 people whose primary responsibility was administrative, but they always were the ones that answered the phone. over time, I developed friendships with them. And part of the thing I had to control was that we would visit for 5 or 10 minutes because they made me feel like they were glad I called.
I always was glad to call ahead and to see how they answer the phone.
Right.
That would be critique.
Mm-hmm.
But also, when it was good, I always was really, really hoping that I could see the person. You have a picture in your mind, you
Right.
see the person as to how they looked in person.
Yeah.
Now, usually what I've found out is you're going to find the person sounds like their voice.
Mm-hmm.
The welcoming, bubbly personality, smiling, dressed clean, fresh. But those that aren't, or the clothes may be rumpled, the hair may be mussed, they don't look kept. So Nancy Friedman, the phone doctor, if you remember her name, she was back a few years ago.
Yeah.
But the rules that she was implementing and sharing were the same rules that we should apply today. Always have a fresh voice, always how may I help you, always have a pen and paper there so you can record who it is calling, ask them.
Well, since I'm going to stop you for just a second in that right there, because we both have experienced that about half of people who answer funeral homes phones do not have anything to write with immediately available to them.
During the day, that's what you're going to find. Maybe not so much early in the morning or in the afternoon, late, but
And that's why you didn't. That's why Dravecki didn't get a call back, is because the message didn't get through. I've experienced that for 45 years. Now, again, I want to emphasize why you and I are hovering over this issue. Answering the phone is the single first impression. That first impression can make or break you. I actually called a funeral home. Now, this is some 30 years ago in Illinois. I remember the funeral home. I'm not going to say it here, but I do remember the funeral home, and here's how they picked up the phone. Funeral home. And it scared me.
Right.
Total impression was that they were completely annoyed that I had called. I wasn't calling to sell them anything either. I was calling to find out the hours of visitation for that particular person. But the point is, as the owner, I think you have a personal obligation to yourself to periodically call in as a customer. And the answering service, I think you have an obligation to call in when they're answering. And I want to reemphasize, I am not opposed to answering services. There are some, compared to when I was doing it, there are some really good ones out there. But the point is, that's the first impression people get.
So here's what we want you to take today. If you are going to make a mistake, how you make the mistake is one thing. How you react to the mistake is another. So what we're suggesting you do at the first of every month, let's just say the first of the month, one of your obligations is to call your funeral home at any particular hour you want to call, and make it different, make it sound, but at least ask a few questions, and then just see how they react to it. But it's your obligation to do it once a month. Do it once a month.
I absolutely think that's true. But the secondary thing that you need to do, and I'm saying you need to do, is think through clearly how you want your phone answered. And I go back to, now maybe you have a different perspective, but I would want every single person who contacted my funeral home to feel that we are glad that they called. Now, I will tell you one anecdote, because I want people to understand that we understand. I had this issue some 30 or 40 years ago, and I talked to the person answering the phone was in their 80s. They sounded like they were in their 80s. They could not get a message. They made you feel that they just didn't make you feel that the place was competent. So I went to the owner. This is a funny story. And I told him, he says, oh my gosh, I know. I said, and I didn't know the circumstances at the time, so I fell into the trap. But he said, I know, but I can't fire her. And I said, why not? He said, because she's my mother.
Wow. Remember, call your funeral home once a month. Check on your staff, check on your team, check on your business. You can do it.
We can help.
Ensure that every call reflects the compassion and professionalism your funeral home stands for. Remember to listen in each week for a new addition to Alan and Danny's podcast library.